and in most third world societies, because people work all their lives, but because they don't put anything on the side, they retire and there is no pension. So the two are completely different. And back to your question, the state of pension funds in the country. Currently, we have two types of pensions in Ghana: the private sector pensions and then the public sector pensions. The public sector pensions will be the superannuation that is run by SNET. So that, and currently the state of the SNET pension in terms of asset under management is about 21 billion Ghana cedis.
Okay.
21 billion.
Is that a lot of money?
It isn't a lot of money. It isn't at all. The SNET scheme is a very mature scheme. It started paying people very, very, long time ago. From the year 2000 or so, it started maturing. And that was when people started comparing what they were getting under SNET to what they were getting under Cap 30.
Okay.
So it has reached decumulation stage over a very long period of time. And that's why the funds are not growing that much, because compared to what you put in and what people take out when they retire, it's not. But when it comes to private pensions, which is a new concept which was introduced in 2008, the private pensions have now reached 61 billion.
More under private pensions than SNET.
More under private pension
than the public.
Than the public, yeah. And
is that good or bad?
Well, it is good. It is good because it means that pensions have now become quite versatile. The public sector pensions alone wasn't enough, and that is what was realized in the year 2003, and that is what led to the agitation for
the
private pension to also come in. So the private pension has really grown, especially in tier 2. There's a tier 2 and there's a tier 3. I think we will have the opportunity to explain to people as we go along. So it is growing, and it started the decumulation, or they started paying out only in the year 2000.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, 2020.
Yes, 2020.
2020. There are too many zeros.
The twos and the zeros are a bit confusing because SNET started paying its own in 2000. The private is 20 years.
Absolutely. So it started paying only in 2020. So there was a long period of accumulation, and that is why it has grown so humongously.
But my worry is when it starts paying, it means then the drawouts are happening. How does it? And for something to be sustainable, the outgoings must be less than the incomings.
Yeah.
Is that the situation for both private and public?
The incomings should be more than the outgoings. And that is what the situation is actually.
For the private?
For both of them. Even for SNET.
Okay.
And for the private. The incomings, which is more people working, more people contributing, compared to the people who are retiring. Our society is quite a very youngish society.
Exactly, Africa as a whole.
Very, very youngish society. So the number of people who retire are always less than those who come in. All we need to do is to create avenue for employment for younger people to start coming in.
So it's not a Ponzi scheme?
It is not a Ponzi scheme.
Pensions are not Ponzi schemes.
They
won't collapse.
Way, they will not collapse. They will not collapse. There is absolutely no way that a pension system will just disappear like it happens in Ponzi schemes. But of course, in everything, there has to be institutions, strong institutions in place that should manage it. If those institutions are not strong, then anything can become Ponzi. Because human beings behave. Remember Robert Maxwell, in UK, he controlled the media world, put it that way, and he had his own pension scheme, and he was drawing money from the pension scheme to run his media business, And it got to a point that it became, like you're rightly saying, a Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
And when people found out, he killed himself. End of the matter, and it's not the end of the matter for the person who has,
he has years ahead of him.
Absolutely.
With no money.
So if the institutions are not strong, it can become a big problem.
And talking of institution, that's where you come in.
Yeah.
NPRA.
Absolutely.
The National Pensions Regulatory Authority, supposed to oversee pension funds.
Yeah.
How has it performed? It performed well under you. How has it performed?
It has been godsend. Let me put it this way, because you see, for many years since we became independent, and we had the Cap 30 pension scheme running, and then the SNIT scheme, also started running. There was nothing like a regulator.
SNIT was a boss on its own.
SNIT was a boss on its own. It was a board that sort of, in quote, regulated it. But you cannot be, because there was a lot of conflict of interest. You take decisions on investment, you take decisions on collection, you take decisions on indexation, and you cannot regulate when you are taking those decisions. So as part of the reform process, as I mentioned, when people started drawing their monies from the SNIT scheme and compared it with the Cap 30, they realized that the Cap 30 was much better than the SNIT scheme. So then the decision to make it more versatile and make it more sustainable came in. And that is why and how the private pension scheme was created. So as part of the reform in bringing in the private pension schemes, it also recommended, the committee recommended, it was led by the late T.A. Bediako. He recommended that there should be a pensions czar or a pensions regulator who would regulate and monitor the operations of all the institutions and pensions. And that is how the NPRA was created under Act 766 in 2008. And it wasn't put in place until 2010.
2 years.
2 years. 2 years after the law had been passed. There were a few political structures to be put in place, because remember, there was a change in government, and it takes time for the new administration to get used to what was really happening. So in 2010, under Professor Mills, the institution was established. And I think over the 13 or 14 years now, it's really, really helped to stabilize the industry in terms of regulation, in terms of setting up pension schemes, in terms of making sure that trustees are doing what they are supposed to do in terms of investment rules and all those things. So I think it's been a useful institution for the pensions industry. Yeah. So
over the past couple of months, when this whole SNIT issue was up in the air and everybody was discussing it and all that, that these are some of the challenges facing pensions. They take decisions. Or are they going to? Why are they selling hotel? The hotel is lucrative. When all those discussions were going on, you sat back, and what was going on in your mind? Because you would have better knowledge than 99% of those screaming their heads off about the challenges faced. What, judging by that discussion, what do you think the situation is like regarding our knowledge and appreciation of what real pensions are as a people? Of course, naturally, there were a lot of emotions because SNIT is a superannuation scheme and it belongs to workers, but underwritten by government. So let's say if SNIT should collapse, touch wood, which will not happen, government will have to pay everybody. Yeah. So the emotions can be understandable. The unions who represent workers felt that they needed to make their voice heard. But the SNIT scheme is a promise. It's a promise to any contributor that when you retire, this is what I'm going to give you. Not based on just the amount you have contributed, but also based on the amount that your employer has contributed. And there's a formula. And they will follow the formula, come what may. And therefore, the decision to invest is with the
with the provider, which is SSNIT. The decision to invest. Sometimes we hear a lot of workers saying that, the SSNIT houses belong to us. The SSNIT investments belong to us. Technically, you're right, because you're the owners of it. But because SSNIT has given you promise, you should always give them the free hand to make decisions when it comes to investment. And these houses are not to be occupied or owned by, it is an investment.
It's business.
Yeah, it's business. Exactly, it's business. Now, if SSNIT feels that our hotels, are just sitting there as white elephants, they're not giving us the necessary investment returns, and we think this is the decision that we have to make, they have every right to make that decision, under Section 603 of Act 766. But they have to come to NPRA. They have to take the decision, with the approval of NPRA, because NPRA has given them what we call investment guidelines. Okay. And if their investment decision falls within the investment guideline, then NPRA will have to give a no objection, and then they can go ahead and do it. Yeah. But of course, if NPRA feels that this is outside the investment guideline, then they can refuse it. But of course, all those emotions, we're sort of trying to force the hand of NPRA to come out, one way or the other. But I thought maybe NPRA should have spoken out to people that, look, we are the regulators. We are keeping our eyes on the ball. Calm down. Whatever decision that will be taken in the interest of the contributors of our superannuation scheme. Maybe the reason why a lot of noise was coming because the regulator was quiet.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Of
over a long period, they were quiet, and then they said, okay, don't go ahead. Then they said, they'll go ahead. Then they say, we know it. There's someone else. Anyway, so is it true that by this formulaic approach, someone has argued that the average pensioner would then begin to live on 40% or less than what he's earning today when he comes on it? Is that true?
Well, you're talking about replacement income here.
Exactly.
Yeah, throughout the world, on average, it's 55%. On average. You never ever get 100% of your what you were earning during your time, because of the portion that you put away. So you cannot get more than 55%.
Okay,
yeah.
I needed that clarity.
Yeah.
So still on the pensioners, then we heard of DDP haircuts. Pensioners picketing, people you wouldn't expect to even go on the streets, almost threatening to go on the streets and all that. How did the debt exchange program, the domestic debt exchange program, how did it affect the whole pensions thing? And people are even talking about confidence in this thing.
There was a lot of myth around this DDEP and pensions, and let me maybe try and demystify this in the first place.
Please help us.
There were, talking about the picketing, there were a number of people who were picketing the Ministry of Finance about the haircut. Now, those people were retirees. They had retired. They had received maybe their lump sums, and they had decided to go and buy bonds, government bonds with it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you have a lump sum, 1,500,000, 200,000, whatever it is. You decide to go and buy a government bond with it. Okay. Now, when the DDEP came, those bonds and many other bonds that the government had, were affected. So those people were going to be affected by the decision, the DDEP. But then the argument was, and okay, so let me leave that one there, and then come to pension funds.
Now, pension funds.
Yeah. Now, pension funds, I was the chief executive then, and we took a decision as regulator that pension funds cannot be part of the exchange program. The reason being that there would be a double jeopardy. Okay, there will be a double jeopardy. Pension funds are secure for a period of time.
Okay.
And it is based on an investment decision. That is why pensions, government bills, treasury bills, government bonds, shares, and all sorts of other investment vehicles or instruments, and therefore, and government bonds are supposed to be, let's say, the safest out of the lot. Okay, and then we have come to you to support, and pension funds can be used for economic development. So this is not the time to pay back pension funds by taking a haircut out of it. So we made it a decision that we are not going to allow pension funds to be included. And we stood our grounds against, the advisors, the IMF, and fortunately for us, we had the unions on our side, So pension funds were excluded. And the moment pension funds were excluded, then the retirees tied their knots with pensions. So, okay, if pension funds were excluded, then we are retirees. Our money is also pension funds, but technically it wasn't.
It was your cash.
Yes.
It was lump sum given to you. It's your personal money. Exactly. It was your personal decision.
So if the DDEP was unfair, fine, it was unfair, but unfair to them, but it was not pension funds. Yeah, that category of investment was not pension funds. So they accused us of also not supporting them, not leaving them on the ledge, because and we couldn't, because pension funds were pension funds. So we knew about 29.6 billion of pension funds which were locked into the government bonds was what we were protecting. Okay. Of course, it did have some impact. If we say the DDEP didn't have any impact, we would be stretching the truth. It did have an impact in the sense that the coupon payments were delayed, and for a long time, especially those tier 3 contributors who wanted to pull their monies out had to be told to hold back because the bonds were not being paid. So they had to pay them in tranches, once every 6 months, and that I would say that was the effect that the DDEP had on pensions. But in terms of haircut or reduction or anything, no, it did not affect that at all.
I think that clarity needed to be made. I mean, because we couldn't help it. It became an election issue.
Definitely.
Yeah, it became an election issue. But, and like I keep saying, a lot of us get into these discussions from a place of abject ignorance. We know nothing, and we just hear one thing and then we run with it and all that. So it's good that you are educating us here. The DDEP, it must have had impact on the banking sector and private businesses as well.
Oh, big time. Yes, it did. Especially the banking sector. It did, because they were bang in the middle of the decision to give the haircut, and in so many ways, because insurance, pensions, and banking are locked together.
The financial services sector.
And so I wasn't feeling very comfortable anytime we went for meetings, because they felt like, why is pension funds excluded and we are not excluded? And I felt like the black sheep.
Everybody's watching.
What did you do? How did you manage to?
Do you know somebody?
Exactly. But you see, pensions are different. Pensions, there is a bit of a mandatory aspect to it. But banking is a decision that you make.
Yeah, it's a personal.
It's a personal decision. It's a corporate decision.
Investments as well.
It's an investment.
Investments as well. So, did you think the DDEP could have been avoided?
Well, that's a big question. A yes and a no. We all knew from 2020 that there was going to be an economic downturn. With all the world's economic supply chain collapsing because of COVID. and the impact that it had on businesses and countries and economies and all those things. So we knew there were going to be a ripple effect. In 2021, it started, the last quarter of it started biting. Maybe what as a country we should have done was to come clean with our citizens, what had the impact of COVID on our economy. Because I think not too long before we went to IMF, the Minister of Finance, said that we're a proud nation and there's no way we're going to go to IMF. I mean, I think that talk didn't help. I mean, we should have been prepared for it. And when you go to IMF, it comes with conditionalities. Fortunately for us, our conditionalities were not about don't employ people, don't do this, don't do that. The only conditionality that we had was like, look, you need to reset your debt. Your debt ratio is too high, and therefore you need to look at it again. And Jamaica had done something similar and somehow seemed to have worked. So that formula was literally sold to us. And again, appealing to people to understand it was a little bit less than expectation. There should have been a much, much better consultation, a much, much better dialogue than just government announcing that this is the way I'm going, it's like my way or the highway.
The highway, yeah.
And that is what angered a lot of people. But considering the fact that the whole thing had started from 2020, there was something that the nation needed. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it affected the elections.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, we were all personally affected. I mean, I was the regulator. If I had purchased a government bond,
you would have been in trouble. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Yeah. You can't say, take out the regulator. No. Everybody, Yeah. So when you look at pensions now, I mean, one of the reports that came out during this whole Senate Hotel saga was the fact that people then pulled out a report that said that Senate had commissioned an international organization to do a research, and it showed that it won't be around for a couple of decades. It won't be existing and all that. Is there any truth in that?
You see, every superannuation scheme, especially defined benefit one, you have to do your health check every 3 years. Our law says that we have to do a health check every 3 years, and the regulator insists on that. And within the 3 years too, you have to do an internal health check. So the 3-year one is an external one, and then every year internally you do your health check. And yes, because it is external, you have to engage institutions like the ILO, the ILO that does it for SNIT. And when they come, they will tell you that, yes, we have looked at your scheme over a long period of time. And these are the likelihoods, okay? Your investment returns are not enough. Maybe your contributions are not enough. Maybe your internal management systems are weak. And then they will give you a projection that if you do not correct these by the year 2025, 2026, whatever, this is what will happen. So they will give you a projection. It doesn't mean that is the end of it.
Okay.
You are given certain recommendations, certain steps to take, and oftentimes when the report comes out, people take it as hook, sink, and liner. But SNIT has always had that health check done, and then they have followed the steps that have been given to them. Yeah.
And what's the worst that could happen? What are some of the things that would happen if you didn't do these 3 things, like increase how much you're making on your investments and all that? What the time comes when you won't have enough money to pay pensions and you will have to wait for people to, what is the worst scenario?
Well, I mean, it's a simple put. You go to a mechanic. You are a driver. You have a car. You go to a mechanic. It tells you that, look, your starter system is beginning to fail. So do something about it. Then you ignore it. Fully, you know what will happen.
One day you can't spark the car.
You can't spark the car naturally. Yeah.
Oh wow! Wow.
Yeah.
Does the current state of our pensions, both public and private, does that give you any confidence that this thing would be there for the next 100 years?
Next 100 years. It is supposed to be there.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
supposed to,
be
yeah.
there. As at the beginning of the conversation, we said it is not a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to run out because of what we call the solidarity rule. People leave and people come in. So first of all, there should be employment. If employment...
So now we're advising government.
Yeah. There should
increase
be
employment.
Increase employment so that there will be a continuous contribution towards the scheme. Okay. And then perhaps they need to look at the retirement age issue.
Hey, that's a big international discussion.
Yeah. Of course, here our constitution specifically mentions age 60. So perhaps maybe now that the government has a big majority in parliament, they may have to look at certain aspects.
Is it supposed to go up or down?
It should go up.
65.
It should go up. Well, you don't jump from 60 to 65. No, it's never done anywhere like that. You do it 60 to 62. Our women hang on a little bit longer than us. We go quite quicker.
Okay.
So in every society, but then because of maternity and other things, sometimes they don't contribute because they go home and have children and come back. So usually they will give them one more year to recoup whatever they have not contributed. So they will be a year ahead of the man, But you do it, like 2-year gap. You grandfather it until it comes up. Even UK is now 67. The retirement age is 67, and the women are 66 now. But it didn't go all the way up there. It was
from 60 to 67.
So I suspect that, for example, in Ghana, maybe we could do a retirement age of 62 for now and see, because people are retiring too early. The contributions are not enough. People get into employment quite late on. I remember when I went to UK, I was 33 years old, and I started work. My boss called me and he said, "Hayford, you're not going to get a good retirement income." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You're too old."
Yeah.
So you need to buy back.
But that in Ghana terms is very young.
Yes.
A 33-year-old
man. Boyo. So I was cool about that. Then he said, no, you're too old. I said, how do you mean? And then he explained to me that over there they start working age 21.
Wow.
So
we have a whole decade ahead of us in terms of contributions.
Yeah. And so you need to buy back. So he explained to me what we call the AVC, the additional voluntary contribution, which in Ghana here is called the tier 3. Exactly.
That's true.
So I had to buy back all the lost years, by paying...
Contributing more.
Yeah, contributing more. So any salary increase that I got, I put back that one in there. And it helped me a lot.
Wow.
It really helped me a lot. So over there, they get much longer time to contribute. Here, we start working very late, and by 60, you're going home. So what is left in the hands of contributors is quite low. So maybe we need to look at that. Then they stay in much longer, and so that they can go home with much better income.
I mean, I see someone calling you after this interview because I see headlines saying former NPRA boss calls for extension of retirement age. Big headlines.
Yeah,
wouldn't
well,
mind.
it should be a national conversation. I don't think we should shy away from that. Of course, I mentioned the caveat that constitutionally, we have to finish work at 60. So nobody is above the law, so that's what it is. But nothing stops us from having a national conversation about retirement age and see how we can make sure that people have much better retirement income security. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any final words?
Well, what I would say to Ghanaians is just like at the beginning of our conversation, we will all retire one day. Everybody will retire one day. There are certain certainties in life. Either you die or you retire. One of these things definitely will come your way. But when you retire, it doesn't mean that you're going to have an income to live on. And therefore, it is important for us to start thinking about how to plan towards our retirement. Our economy here is an informal one. Many people work on their own. And I can tell you for free that the people who work on their own get a lot of monies which they don't consider as salaries, and therefore they go as they come. But there are opportunities for people to voluntarily contribute, just like my boss told me to buy back my years, voluntarily contribute. There are companies that are available called corporate trustees that are available. You can even go to SNIT, and make a voluntary contribution. The little that you put on the side will help you when you retire to get some kind of income. So Ghanaians must take up that culture of contributing towards their retirement income.
Thank you very much for coming by, and we'll come back for you another time. Sure. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
That was the former Chief Executive Officer of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, NPRA, Mr. Hayford Ataku. Always enlightening talking to him. It's always an education. Like we promised you here on the Business Breakfast.